Thank you very much. Maybe I'll first introduce myself a little bit. My career actually started in London when I started to work with Johan Kramer in agencies here. And I mean, it didn't last for very long because at one day we kind of thought it would be nice to turn up in a chicken suit on a meeting in London here. But it was these kind of chicken suits, and we rented them on Shaftesbury Avenue. But then 2 weeks later we got fired because this is our firing letter of resignation. It says like, bringing Johan and Erik to London was a great experiment, but their style of working does not suit the creative department or fit with the rest of the agency. Chai Day runs a team system and solves its problems with a team approach, and Johan and Erik are very much individuals. I thought it was a compliment. So too much for this agency. The agency will lose a bit of its character, but will also be stronger and more coherent. So that was our start in advertising. But then after 2 years, we thought like to start our own agency in Amsterdam. And this was the first picture taken there. It's me on the left, of course. And yeah, one of the reasons that we wanted to start was, of course, that working in bigger international agencies is can be quite frustrating because you don't have a lot of contact with the clients you work with, and I mean, it felt a bit like a prison after a while. So we started in an office in Amsterdam, which is based in a former church. It's quite nice because you can tell your mother that you go to church every day, and. But one of the reasons was that we just wanted to be with a group of 30 to 40 people in one space and work together, also influence each other by our hobbies, and definitely have no account executives anymore there. So now for 15 years we do this, and we still have no account executives. And 4 years ago, we also started a company in London here. It's called KK Outlet. It was in a former, it's more like a retail space where we have an office and a gallery, an office in the basement, and upstairs there's a gallery and a shop. Because over the years we accumulated so many books and products that we thought like, okay, this is also an opportunity for us to have a little bit of a shop, and in the gallery to show frequently things that we like ourselves or work that of people that we very much like. And I mean, every 6 weeks there's an opening there on Hoxton Square, and I was amazed by the amount of people that turned up there because I'm from Amsterdam, and but I soon found out that it has to do a lot also with the free beers that we provided, because after some time after the beer was gone, it was totally empty. So today I just want to talk to you a little bit about the fact that when you have a strong idea, it allows you to blur quite a lot. I mean, let me just talk a little bit about a strong idea. I think nowadays with the technology that is so easy to access, and when you see like how young people are now already knowing all the programs and knowing very much how to finish things, I think that in the future an idea and having a good idea is one of the strongest selling points of professionals, I think. And I mean, when you have this idea, you can blur into many different areas. I think you saw that also today, that in many, I mean, many of the presenters don't only stick to one discipline, but they cross over a lot. And that's also the opportunity in this time. So in my case, that was also something which I really enjoy, to cross over between a lot of disciplines. I mean, that when I started as a graphic designer and started also in advertising, For instance, when I went to a birthday party and people asked me what I did, and I said I work in an advertising agency, then they quickly changed the subject again and went to something else. But nowadays it's much more open, and if you want, you can cross over with a lot of different, when you have a strong idea, with a lot of different disciplines. So first, some early work of us that we made. We worked for 6 years for Diesel. This is just to give tips to people who want to stay younger constantly. So maybe it's good to drink more urine. And another work is it's called Action. Here we had these kind of street protests showing what kind of happy protest you could make as well. So respect your mum, or more green traffic lights, or kiss your neighbor, things like that. And another one is a campaign we did called Nature, Love It While It Lasts. So here you have these kind of fashion victims kind of abusing nature. And this was like a spoof on Hieronymus Bosch' Garden of Eden. Another more early work we did was for Nike, where we kind of had to do advertising around the event of the marathon in Berlin. And here we thought, like, why not, because it's quite obvious that Nike always takes these anchor men and these very good athletes to star in their ads. But on the list of all the people running, we found one guy who was 78 years old, and he was running it for many times. So for 3 years we used him as the key figure, and we did some flyers and fanzine where his wife gave tips for what kind of diet you should use and all these kind of things. So for 3 years, mostly he came in about 20 minutes late or 10 minutes late because he was stopped by radio and TV interviews, and that worked quite good. A more graphic design job is actually for a graphic design museum. So here we had these posters in the street showing people that were not familiar with graphic design, how graphic designers are thinking. So this is like a broken letter H, an upside down chair, or the number 4. And a goalpost, a lowercase letter N, or an unused staple. Or you have like a Jew stain, the map of Costa Rica, or a cornflake. And next I want to show like 3 commercials that we did. And this is maybe good to tell. I mean, I spent most of the work that I did in advertising, of course, and but don't get me wrong, I really hate advertising as well. I mean, probably as most as you hate it, and but for me that's also like really a stimulation to find things to. I mean, everybody advertising is so stereotyped and so cliche in a way, and it's quite nice to find like a little side streets where you can do things, and sometimes that works and sometimes not. But the first ad I want to show is for a mobile phone company, and we made many ads for them, but this one was more about how about the fact that when people are on the phone that they don't have an eye for what is going around them anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, the next one is for a radio station, and here it's the same thing. When there's a World Cup of soccer, for instance, every advertiser uses the same kind of cliches, so we just try to break that a little bit with this one, hopefully. Yeah, there were a lot of complaints by animal rights organizations, but so we had to make another one to see that the dog was still alive. But the next one is for Lipton iced tea, and this was particularly more an ad that would run in the winter, because this is like a summer drink, and we had a challenge to convince people to drink it also in the winter. So we thought it could be nice to say, like, create your own summer and show how you could do that. Yeah, more serious job was like coming up with a theme for the city of Amsterdam. So this is we did a campaign for that and a book. But this was like a sculpture which is now in Amsterdam and travels around. And I mean, almost this became the carrier of the campaign, because there are as many people online that post the pictures that they have taken here, and it's almost like like a little monument where they take images. I think as a creative person and working in a place, it's also very important. Also, what Raphael said already, to just do things on your own and come up with ideas for yourself. I mean, you don't need a brief always to come up with ideas, but just it's good to find all kinds of occasions to come up with these things and generate products from it. One of the things we did in London here was last year, when there was the wedding between Kate and William. And there was, traditionally in England here they have these wedding plates, but there are, in a way, there are no wedding plates for a younger generation. So thanks for the free day off, and it should have been me. Those were two of the 5 we did. We sold about 20,000 in 3 weeks' time, so that was quite nice. Apart from making advertising and doing branding and design, I also sometimes curate exhibitions or make exhibitions. This one is all about artists who generate ideas from internet. And another one is, I'll show more about that later, is a show about all the images that I collect. And this one was in Rotterdam, in Holland. There was an installation with 16 art pieces and 16 thread mills, because I found out that people spend only, on average, 6 seconds looking at an art piece, while in a sports school you spend 20 minutes on a thread mill looking at a TV. So I just combined these two. And when you ran on them, it would like count the minutes that you would spend on the treadmill. Yeah, this week there was an exhibition that opened in the V&A called Memory Palace, and I did a sculpture for that. So it's around the corner here. And one example that I want to show you, which shows a little bit that there is, in a way, not really a good idea. Doesn't have to be very expensive. Sometimes it does, but it still stays a good idea, however much it's produced for. So these are two films that we made. One is the most expensive one. It was about 1.3 million euros to produce, and one was the cheapest one was about 250 to 300 euros. The first one is for a beer company, and this idea came in a way from that we saw that there was a little article in the newspaper saying that men nowadays don't really behave like real men anymore. They are more like metrosexuals because they go more than normal to the hairdresser. They use body lotion. They go to they do more gardening and all these kind of things. So we thought for beer it's quite nice to target it to these men and then really bring them back to their roots again.
I once wore armor.
I would hunt animals with teeth as long as my arms.
I would chase adventure to the four corners of the world.
We carried spears.
We would kill or be killed.
And all that mattered was survival.
Yeah, now the cheapest one, kind of similar casting, but much less production cost. Yeah, next up, there are two clients we work for in a way a long time already, two hotels, and but they are totally different from each other. But here it shows also that when you have a very strong starting point as an idea, you can work for many years with this client and also using the same, going back to the same idea constantly. One hotel is totally based very strongly on design, and the other one absolutely not. I start with a hotel called Citizen M, which started in Holland, and there's also one in London now. The name comes from Mobile Citizen, and it's like a container hotel. So there are like a lot of these units which are totally prepared and they're in a storage. They are stuck on top of each other. And in a way, the hotel combines in a very good way budget and luxury with each other. Because, I mean, there's not the irritating things that you have to wait for check-in or for check-out. You have to do a lot of things yourself. But the rooms themselves are actually very comfortable, and a lot of things are for free. So we created this kind of population of mobile citizens and use them throughout the communication. And also use, of course, a lot of opportunities in the hotel to communicate. So even the smallest things like a bag communicates in a way this combination of budget and luxury. And we did even the soap there was one called the Citizen AM and a Citizen PM. So one for the morning, one for the afternoon. Or a soap which says like designed to turn even the longest haul traveler into a sparkling, clean and nice smelling human being again. And one of the very small jobs in this hotel is that we actually had to design the wake-up call.
100, 99, 98, 97, 96, 95, 9.
Yeah, this mostly takes up all the time of the talk, but not today, not today. Yeah, another hotel is actually the first client we ever started for back in 1996. It's called the Hans Brinker Budget Hotel. And this is a hotel which has 500 beds in the center of Amsterdam. But then the next day after they called, I went there, and it was, I mean, it was like horrifying because it was like the biggest shithole I saw in my life. And actually this was our first client, so... But okay, you don't say no immediately. So I talked with the owner, and he said, like, there's only one brief I have for you, is I don't want to get ever any complaints anymore. So we came up with maybe the idea, and we found out quite soon that honesty was their only luxury that was like in that hotel. So we used that for a long time in campaigns now. When we started for the hotel, they had 60,000 overnights. But soon we made these kind of posters saying now a bed in every room, or now even more rooms without a window. So really almost like anti-advertising. And now even more dog shit in the main entrance. And this we used for real because there's a lot of dog shit in Amsterdam, and around the central station we stuck like these flags in dog shit. And also, when you checked into the hotel, there was this A3 card. It was like on your bed, like this. And all the things that you need, but that weren't there, you could cut them out, and then, like, you would have it. The placemats we did as well, and every week a different one. But then we saw already after this, we saw quite soon that this kind of strategy worked quite well, and the irony and almost the anti-advertising worked very good. So because they got more visitors and more overnights. So the next time we did was like the next campaign was a very luxurious one. So we stole these images from 5-star hotels and put all these asterisks on there. And it says like not included in the bottom. Yeah, that did the job as well, because there were in 1 year 10,000 more overnights. But then we thought it's good maybe to also show once the people that visit the hotel. So we did this kind of classical advertising trick of before and after, but we only turned it around. So it's like check in, the Hans Brinker budget hotel, check out. So the tourist board of Amsterdam was not very happy with this campaign. But later we got the job to do the I Amsterdam logo, but. And then after this one, we thought like, okay, now we reached almost the end of it because we can't go any further with this. But that sometimes is then again an inspiration for the next one. So this says like Hans Brinker Budget Hotel, it can't get any worse, but we'll do our best. So these were all kinds of smart solutions. I mean, this is a real situation in the hotel. It's not Photoshop, and there are 3 rooms in the hotel with this view, so it's better to kind of shut the curtains because you have a little bit of a better check-in then. And also here, I mean, the image on the right is a little bit more promising and more hopeful than the image on the left, of course.
Hans Brinker Budget Hotel, Amsterdam. It can't get any worse. But we'll do our best.
Yeah, and I mean, soon after there were also all these kind of boutique and design hotels popping up next to our hotel. And I mean, sometimes you just can react on that because we just called it that the Hans Brinker Budget Hotel also had unique design. Yeah, and another year there was, of course, a lot of eco hypes around the world. So finally we found out, after working for many years for them, that the hotel had also to offer something very positive, because we found out that the hotel was accidentally eco-friendly. Because it had an eco towel in the room, of course, and an eco elevator, and there was even an eco shower. And this idea came in a way from the hotel sign that was out of the door of the hotel, just the big sign on the wall. Because sometimes you find ideas just on the street, and I mean, they are already there. You just have to pick them up and use them. So for many years, only the L was burning of the hotel sign. So this was in a way the inspiration for this eco campaign. And here on the top it says like there's this little eco fact saying like, our hotel sign only used 20% of the energy of normal hotel signs. So now, I mean, we work, I mean, for 15, 16 years for them, and now they have reached a level of about 155,000 overnights a year, coming from 60,000. And I mean, the hotel looks even worse than the first time I got in. And but now still there are complaints, which is quite irritating, of course. But now there are complaints because people now complain because they think it's not bad enough. You know, they really go there to have like a really bad experience, and it's almost like a cult destination. But so there are still complaints, so that it didn't solve everything. Another job I did, which shows also sometimes that you have with a very small job, you can also create some more buzz around it. I mean, it doesn't have to mean when you get a very small job that is it. So I was asked by the Dutch post office to make a stamp. And I found out that nowadays you can also print stamps on this lenticular paper. So it means that there are 30 frames of images in one piece of paper, which means like almost over 1 second of film. So I made this and asked Anton Corbijn, the filmmaker, to make this 1 second film. And he used like one of the famous actresses in Holland for this. So if you flip it, you see the film. But I thought it's quite nice to kind of promote this film and have a premiere of the film at a film festival in Holland. So that's what I did, and then we announced that there was a new short film of Anton Corbijn, and a lot of people came to the audience. Was like as big as here, and everybody was very beautifully dressed and in tuxedos. And so then the next, when the light dimmed, the next film started. Yeah, so a lot of people were very, very disappointed after this 1 second. But on the way out, they got like a free stamp signed by Corbijn. So that was, they had smiles on their faces again. But this shows that even with a small job, you have quite nice opportunities. You see nowadays also that you can use a lot of different people to collaborate with you in certain jobs or do totally different things that you never did before. I recently got this job by 2 schools that merged, and in total they had like 5,000 students. So they wanted to have something to celebrate this get-together of the schools. So what I did, I made this sculpture, and then had all the students to pass, like the 5,000 students to pass the sculpture. But then at the entrance of the big factory hall, there was a huge container with chewing gum. So they had to decorate their own statue with chewing gum. And so this meant that the DNA of all these 2 schools, of everybody in those schools, were merged together in this one work. Very horrible, very filthy work, but now it's still in the school, and it functions more now to stick I mean, it gets more beautiful and beautiful every time, because now everybody sticks stuff on it. And another recent project we did here in London is for Red Stripe. We work together with a company that makes these almost analog rigs on stuff. So, for instance, you see that on the right, top right, behind the bottles. So we thought it's nice to transform like a corner shop into a total, working, almost like a concert hall. And so when people would go in and would take something out of the fridge, there would be an interaction with sound and movements. So I'll just show you that.
Neymiş? Testing 1, 2.
Another, as I said, I sometimes cross over like paths with ideas for, and I use them then within musea or in other things. One was a question I got from a museum in Amsterdam called Foam, and they asked me how the photography museum, how a photography museum in the future would look like. So I'm already for a while very much fascinated about the fact how many images we live with and how many images we kind of digest every day, and it's almost not possible anymore. People are now more kind of editors instead of that they still look at things. We just consume images almost. So what I did, I downloaded for 24 hours all the photographs that were newly uploaded on Flickr. And these were in total, I did it with a program, and in total there were 950,000 images. And then I printed them for real and just threw them in a museum. And people could walk through and then pick them up and take them. But it's bizarre how, I mean, the kind of the whole discussion between public and private, and how private pictures, how many private pictures people just post on the internet. And but this was a nice way to show once physically how many images we live with, and that are just like on one site are being added in 24 hours. And, yeah, so I started also saying that we kind of make a lot of products and books and do these almost like inspiration also for our work, because I think that when you work in a certain discipline, I mean, you should never get the inspiration from that discipline itself. You should really find it outside of that discipline. And so I have, for myself, I have a big fascination for photographs that I find, amateur photographs, and so I'll show you a little bit of that. I mean, for many years now, we publish them ourselves, these books, just because of the fact, because in the beginning other people didn't want to publish them, so then you have to do it yourself. But now they would sometimes want that, but now this is already a fact. It started with one of the books I made called Wonder, and this was still made in a time where people had to pick up their photographs from a shop where they were developed. But then they would go through the photographs and sometimes leave photographs just because they thought they weren't good. So this one, for instance, is a photograph left by a woman. In her sacket she had only one photograph, so she was already quite pissed off. But when she went on holiday and took the first picture, the shutter got stuck of the camera. So her whole holiday got photographed onto one image, and that's this one. But even this one she didn't take. So. But I think it's a beautiful photograph. Also a lot of double exposures, of course, very, very funny ones. And yeah, decisive moments. And I mean, this is something you never think of course, when you make a photograph. And this is my favorite one. I mean, how could you leave that in a shop? Bizarre. Another magazine we make is called Useful Photography. We make now for 10 or 11 years, we make it almost every year, we make it once. And this magazine was all about cow photographers, because every country has a cow photographer, believe it or not. I mean, they always photograph exactly in the same way. And they do this, of course, to keep the breed and keep the track of like where the cow comes from. And but they always put like a little bit of grass underneath the two first legs. This is just to straighten the back of the cow, and then they hold it exactly in the same way. But then in every country, the cow is exactly the same way portrayed, but always has a different background, of course. And I have a little film also how the Dutch cow photographer, how he's actually functioning, because it's really a trait. Normally taking one of these pictures takes about half an hour.
In een bolletje als... Nee, het is een bolletje. En die andere moedersvader was een bolletje. Rechts voor naar voren toe. Rechts voor ietsjes achteruit. Iets naar buiten toe. Kan de voorkant van het blokje ietsjes grijs bovenop gooien? Oké. Start erbij, auto toe.
Yeah, he has actually the car standing in the field because when the cow is perfectly in position, he puts like a cassette tape in the car with cow sounds. So this will make the cow even more concentrated for the picture. But it's a hell of a job.
Nee, kom maar. Hij zit hier voor mij, hoor. Nou, dan is het moeilijk. Ik heb echt het geschoven. Ik blijf even staan, dan zou ik weer de blad stakken. Dan loop jij recht niet in.
Yeah, this was the end result. Bravo. Another issue is we made on photographs that we found on pornographic websites, but then just the photographs before it starts to happen, of course. And they show all these kind of sceneries. So there's a lot of, this is like a driving test, but there's also birthday parties, decorating parties. I mean, it's bizarre to see what kind of, they try to seduce you to use your credit card with these kind of images. But here the so-called actors, they use a little bit of their acting skills. There's also, of course, the classic pizza delivery scene. Big sausage pizza, it says on the right. And then here, this one is very bizarre because there's a woman in a red dress pouring water over herself with a coffee can. I mean, why would you do that? Why? So, I mean, in this magazine, we show all these kind of semi-professional photographers that we never know the names of the photographers, but they have a certain trait of doing this. And, I mean, just by taking the images out of its original context makes them look very interesting, because these images also on sites, on websites, we don't see them anymore, but just by extracting them, you look at them. And to finish with, I'll show a few examples of a series of books I make called In Almost Every Picture. They have all the same title. And this is more a fascination I have of amateur photography. And anyway, I have a big fascination for amateurism, because nowadays you see that everything is like going towards perfection. Everything is, I mean, nowadays people can finish everything perfectly. But I think that we can learn a lot from, also professionals can learn a lot from amateurs, because they have no gêne to do things, or they don't have the ballast of a professional, and they dare to make mistakes. And they are sometimes even more funny than professionals. So I'll show you a few examples. The first book I made started in about 2001, because I found about 400 slides of this woman on a flea market in Barcelona. And so when I got home, I really looked at them and placed them in the right order. And I saw that there was a husband and his wife, and he took like for 12 years photographs of his wife, and they really made like this kind of amateur fashion shoot. I mean, sometimes they brought a rose and he stuck it in her mouth, and or there was a lot of bathing suits in the 400 images, and but then putting them in order, so for like a period of 12 years. And you could use it almost like a flip book, the book, because then you would see that towards the end, the woman gets much smaller in the image. So you see her shrinking, and I mean, this means in a way that the photographer lost a little bit of interest in its subject. And so, or he would have maybe more an eye for the surroundings, but the last image in the book, she's almost disappeared, you know, so... That is very funny to find these kind of strange habits in amateur photographs. And so I did an exhibition in Barcelona and was trying to see if this woman was still alive. And in the press they called her Senora X or La Mujer Misteriosa. And about 2 weeks later there was a woman of about 70 years old, and she came to the gallery, and she said that she knew the woman on the pictures because her name was Josefina Iglesias, and she worked with her in a telephone company, and she died about 6-7 years before. And this showed also that, I mean, they didn't have children, she said, and her husband died as well. So then this also showed how these images end up on the market. And are just there, yeah, I mean, there's no track of the family anymore, it's just gone. So that's why I got interested in making these books on amateurs. But I also sometimes find these series on the internet, because this was a series I found from a Japanese amateur, or like a guy who had this rabbit. And the rabbit was called Oolong. But he found out soon that the rabbit can balance everything on his head. So on his website, every day he put like a new image of something new on the rabbit's head. And it became very strange after a while. And I mean, constantly changing. And every day I would go to the site and then just, I mean, it makes your day, 8 o'clock in the morning, you go to the site and then you find a new picture again. And I mean, they get more weird and weird over time. And he's a great balancer, Oolong, because, I mean... But then one day I checked the site and I saw that Oolong had nothing on his head because he got sick. And but then the next day you could follow how his sickness was progressing. And one day I found this one. Ooh. But I thought this is the end of it. And but then still I checked the next day, but there was this one the next day. So these are 2 carrots, by the way. They're not his ears. So, but they're not his frozen ears. But here as well, I think, yeah, to see how an amateur really thinks and makes these things. I mean, for me, it's really an inspiration to make also the other stuff, or to make things anyway. I mean, you you need to get inspired by something, and if you do that in your own industry, it makes no sense. Because, I mean, for instance, advertising is an industry. They only give each other awards, and I mean, only the hairdressers industry gives each other more awards, and advertising is on the second place. I mean, it's ridiculous. So you can spend your energy, instead of entering awards and going to award shows, just into looking at these things. It's much nicer. One other book I found is actually from a family who was dealing with one of the big mysteries in photography and struggling with this, because this is in a way like How to Shoot My Black Dog. And this family, they totally failed all their life. I mean, they kept on going and they kept on going. And they even chose to have a black couch. So, I mean, don't buy a black sofa when you have a black dog. But, I mean, it was incredible. In the whole album was one big failure. And even when there was bright sunlight outside, they managed to photograph the dog. in front of the shadow and with backlight. So, I mean, it was terrible. And it was real. I didn't retouch these at all. I mean, this was exactly how it was. And but then I found also one image in the album that they got so pissed off with it, I think, that they started to overexpose the film, and they thought like it has to happen once. So that's this one. So finally, they made it finally, but then the rest was totally overexposed, and but at least they could see their dog in an image. Okay, and to finalize this evening, I just want to show one more of these books. And that's in a way the same one which I started with the Josefina, the woman photographed by her husband. But this is an American woman, and she's called Valerie. I found these on Flickr. And then I got contact with Fred and Valerie. Fred is the photographer. And Fred, for since the 80s, this picture was taken in 1980. He likes to photograph Valerie in the water. And here it's with a bathing suit, but soon Valerie had to keep her clothes on, first with short pants, but then also with long pants, just and then making the pants wet. And I mean, constantly over hundreds and hundreds of images finding Valerie in the water. I mean, he took her everywhere. And then also secretly they went to, at night, they went to public fountains and... yeah, they got carried away a little bit here. And even when it's raining, it's really positive for them when it's raining. So it hardly ever happens in Florida, but I mean, they use that as an opportunity. And I mean, Fred is a very, I think Fred is a very gifted photographer. I mean, there are a lot of photographers who like to make an image like this. So. Again, they use their own swimming pool a lot, and even in the winter they take photographs. And she all get dressed up for this event. I mean, she takes the purse in the water, all her belongings get wet, and she uses makeup, and this is like a modern version of Ophelia almost. It's like a beautiful, I think it's a beautiful photograph. So in the end, I had contact with them. I said, like, can I make the book with all these images as a tribute to your work? And they really liked it, of course. But then I thought, like, how good would it be that I print some of the books on plastic? I printed 400 copies on plastic paper, like that you can take in the water. But I didn't tell them. I thought, like, it's kind of a joke between them and me. And then I asked them to that I would send the book, and I asked them to make like publicity photos for the book. So he was very happy to do that, and so I wanted to have Valerie with the book in the water, of course. And then he sent me this email, and he said like, "Hello, Erik. I've sent a dozen of photos from our afternoon book swim. I hope they meet what is needed for publicity photos. I have Photoshop touched them up for good presentations. I shot well over 100 views, and these are the best." And the shoot went well. We were both in the mood. There was a light overcast as hoped for, with no harsh shadows. Valerie wanted to know if the book was really to go into the water. I said yes. The book slipped down into the water a little bit at a time, Valerie taking it and herself in deeper as the photos progressed. Eventually, it was fully under. We enjoyed the tantalizing intrigue of it. After the photo sequence, we both swam with the book, looking again at each picture. The water was not seeming to have any effect on it. We must have enjoyed 2 hours in the water with it. I rinsed it off in the house, dried off each page, and placed paper towels between each page. The book seemed to have withstood the lengthy adventure just fine. Loved the whole business, Fred and Valerie. And then these were some of the images. And then, this was my favorite one, where... So thank you very much.